Dave again at titlesearch.com and AFX Title. Family-owned properties that have been passed down through the generations a lot of times will accumulate defects in the property title or inconsistencies in the chain of title. Just got off the phone a couple minutes ago with a guy. He had a property that his father was supposed to get through a transfer from a corporation. At the time he was a partner in that corporation, and part of the agreement he had was to pay a certain amount and get the property. So he paid that amount. He was given shares in the corporation, but the deed to the property was never signed over to him. He never received title. So 20, 30 years later, this second generation to this transaction was looking to get the property title so he could put it in his name. Well, come to find out, the title was never transferred. The company was now defunct. It had been dissolved years prior, so there was no way to create a document to record. And there's little or thin records of the original agreement to transfer that property. The same thing can happen even in an heirship type scenario where a great-grandfather signs it, transfers a property to a son and then to another grandson and vice versa. Well, if these documented transfers are not done, if it's just done verbally on a handshake, 15, 20, 40, 50 years later, there could be a lot of ambiguity about who actually owns the property. There's no chain of title from one generation to another, and then that third or fourth generation is going to be looking back and saying, well, how do we get the title in our name? So doing this on a regular basis is the best way to keep track of who the ownerships are. It creates a situation that we run into sometimes with real estate is what's called a jump title, where the title actually jumps from one owner through the chain, leapfrogs to somebody at the end of the chain. It's the opposite of a wild deed on a property. A wild deed is something that jumps in the middle of a chain. A jump title is something that circumvents the chain. The problem with a jumped title is that it can introduce claims of other heirs. So each generation has people in it that have an ownership claim. They may have spouses, they may have children, they may have other people who have claims against their assets. And if the property transfers through that generational level without having a clear title, it's documented, those people can come back in later, even 2 or 3 generations down the road, and say, hey, look, I had a claim to this property because at the time it was owned by this person, I had a lien against that person, or I was married to that person. So jumping title is a bad idea. Worst case scenario, or even best case scenario, that end generation may not have a clear understanding of who has what the percentages are. So each generation should create their own titling in the property so there's no misunderstandings, no ambiguity. So family properties, heirs, wills, probates should all be documented so that at each level it's not relying on memory who has what and what property is supposed to go to which person and who's responsible for the payments, and then maybe even who gets to live in the property. So take a look at these things on your family property. If you have any questions, you can give us a call and we can give you some suggestions, or you can get good legal advice from a qualified attorney.